Welcome to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast, the place where we explore what happens when we slow our pace, listen more deeply, and live in rhythm with what truly matters. In today's conversation, we travel literally and philosophically to Italy, where time stretches differently, rest is respected, and productivity isn't measured by speed, but by presence. This episode invites us to question our obsession with urgency and rediscover the power of natural rhythms within our bodies, our work, and even the living world around us. My guest, Tigrilla Gardenia, brings a rare and beautiful blend of experience, decades working at the intersection of technology, art, innovation, and nature, from Microsoft and Real Networks to Cirque du Soleil and European sustainability projects. For the past 14 years, she has lived in Damanhur, one of the world's most renowned spiritual eco-communities in Italy, where cultural cycles, social design, and connection to nature shape every day. With deep expertise in plant neurobiology, biomimicry, and nature-inspired design, this conversation explores what plants, siestas, and Italian culture can teach us about patience, communication, creativity, and even honoring our own energetic seasons. This episode is a reminder that when we slow down enough to listen to our bodies, to nature, and to each other, we don't fall behind. We move forward with more clarity, joy, and intention. So grab a cup of something warm and snuggle in for a cozy conversation about embracing the season, no matter the time of year, and let's jump in. I just went with some friends for like 10 days. We stayed in a friend's like house that they had restored. The key was like this big.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
okay, we're really using that kind of key? All right.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that's still done in a really old-fashioned sort of way. And I was just talking about that yesterday. It was so much fun because we were talking about exactly that, like the differences in the things that are just still in a different pace and a different way of looking at it. Like I live at the foothills of the Alps, and as you drive around here, it is very much like you see in the movies, in the sense of, little dilapidated houses, some of them really huge, but like half of them have a hole. And so they're, kind of used to it. And the animals are still with the garden, are still like I was driving. My friend and I I have a friend of mine who has a motorcycle. And so sometimes I go off with him on the weekends. We went up to this super, super, super cute little town up in Aosta, up in the mountains. And as we were heading up, there was like patches underneath the gallery, the tunnels. And like you come out of the tunnel and there's like this tiny little patch of earth and people have made a garden there. It's like, and then the house is right there, right next to the road, which, no American would ever use. But it's just the way it's always been here. And so that part of it still exists. It's frustrating as hell when you're trying to get things done in a different pace. But then you stop and you think and you're like, okay, it sucks that they close everything at lunchtime because, that's when I can get things done. But at the same time, it's kind of cool that everything's closed at lunchtime because then, you can rest at lunch. It's this weird contradiction.
You can eat
that we still live through
and
here.
rest.
Yeah. And you could I take my Italian lunch, now I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my full 2 hours. I'm going to cook, I'm going to eat, I'm going to lie down for a minute, I'm going to read something, I'm going to enjoy that full 2 hours.
Yes.
Everything's closed. They can't do shit. So might as well.
Right. Might as well. Right. The whole when in Rome. And I remember coming back from Italy going, I am going to start eating the way I should and having fresher ingredients. And then like 6 months later, interesting how you get back into the indoctrination of whatever society you're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's super easy. It's super, super easy. Yeah. In some ways you complain about it here because you're like, oh my God, I just want to have takeout today. I don't want to cook. And it's like, okay, do I want to grab a pizza? Do I want to grab a pizza? Or do I want to grab a pizza? Okay, I'm cooking in. It's just like, forget it. I'm not, because there's nothing else. I mean, especially where I am, where everything is just still small little kitchens, and it's fine. In some ways it's great. And in other ways you're like, I am going to die. But then again, I could
A
always
different type
I
of
went to Turin the
convenience.
other day. Exactly. It's a very different thing. Yeah. We
Right.
don't have
Yeah.
fast food around here. Fast food is literally just a pizza. The only thing you could do of takeaway that is fast food is a pizza. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing else. That's your option. And there is no delivery. I mean, yeah, if you're in the city, but I'm
No.
not in the city.
Yeah.
So, but if you're in the
Different.
city,
No.
sure. But if not, you're like, no, there is no.
I can remember I was trying to figure out the difference between Spanish and Italian, and I was emphatic that crema, because I was trying to get coffee, and I went down and, like, literally the house we were in, you just walk down the hill to go to the store in the community. It was
Right.
in somebody's house. So I was trying to get
Right.
cream for my coffee, and I figured I'd have to get, like, fresh cream and then milk and then mix it if I wanted, like, something similar to half and half. And I kept on saying crema, and they thought I meant for my hair, and I was like, "No," and it's just such a funny
Nope.
antidote.
It's not the same.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I understand that.
And they figured
I
out.
always laugh. Yeah, I always laugh at that with people because especially, I mean, I'm also a native Spanish speaker. So when people
Mm,
come here who are Spanish speakers, they're always like, I understand. I'm like, no, you think you
mhm,
understand because you
yeah,
might understand the words, but you do not
mhm,
understand the meaning of the words. And I say to them, trust me, I've been there. Like we've all been
mhm,
there. But it is not the same. Are probably,
mm-mm,
like a quarter to a third of the language has the exact same words with completely
yeah,
different meanings. And then
yep,
another quarter of the language is similar sounding words, but with a completely different conjugation. So you sound weird when you say it. So it's like,
mm,
it's
mm,
not, just pretend it's not the same. As a matter of fact, I had to kind of
mhm,
almost ignore that I knew Spanish. I was like, okay, I'm going to think
yeah,
of this as a whole new language because even now, one of my closest friends and I, we only speak in Spanish because she's Spanish. And
mhm,
so whenever we're writing, like the first sentence is always this mix mush of crap that we're like, oh my God, what is it? And hold on, I need to purge the Italian from my system before so every time we're like talking, the first sentence is, after we've been immersed or we're talking with other people around us that are talking in Italian, then we start to talk and we're like, this is all mixed. Hold on, purge, purge, purge.
yeah, you have to forget
It's fun.
everything and just let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You do. Yeah, learning languages is always kind of this mix of, on some hand, you want to lean on the languages that you know, but more than anything, you want to lean on your
Mm,
ability to switch languages. It's kind of this
mm,
strange piece. But when the languages are too close, you kind of have to do a division. It's a really interesting perspective of how to divide and how, like, for example, if I'm studying German, I can rely on English because most likely the words that I recognize in German are Germanic words that came into the English
mm,
vocabulary, and therefore that's what they mean and they're just expanded on. It's another thing when you're talking about a language that has the same exact word, like crema. It's a great, great example
mhm,
that has two completely different definitions that you're like, no, that's not going to work. And you were also going in there with an American concept that doesn't exist in
yeah,
Italian, which is to put something other than milk in your coffee. So you're adding on top of that, like a cultural layer of they can't even, I have a similar story to that. My mother and I and her ex-husband, we all went to Paris when I was young. I mean, I was like maybe 20 or something like that. And we went to Paris and I remember so well. So in our culture of Spanish, there's this thing called un cortadito. And a cortadito, the word itself means a little cut. And it is
mm,
a form of coffee and milk, but usually it
oh,
originated with condensed milk and then it
uh-huh,
morphed into evaporated milk. But it's a form of evaporated
mm,
milk and coffee and Cuban coffee. And so, and it's called
mhm,
cortadito. So here we are in Paris and he's trying to get a cortadito. And what is he doing? He's looking at the woman and he's saying, he's going like this, because for him, little cut,
no,
cortadito. And he's going like this and he's going café, lay. And he's like doing a cutting motion. And we're looking at him cracking up. And it's like,
no,
cafe, lay, right? And cutting. And so, of course, what does the woman bring him? The waitress brings him a cafe au lait. And he's like, when this
yeah,
cafe au lait comes, which is half and half, he's like, no,
right,
that's not what I'm asking for. And we're all looking at him going, how could you possibly think that she can figure out un cortadito to cut from this when she's French and they don't use that word to cut. Oh, it was just so funny. But that's like adding a layer of cultural norm of, and especially because the
Yes.
cortadito is made with evaporated or condensed milk. We're like, no way they're going to get that. Like, she did the best she could. Cafe au lait. Like, seriously, you couldn't have asked for better.
I mean, and half of it is just like trying, like putting yourself out there. But I remember like my other
Exactly.
American friends were like, you try, you know Spanish, you try. And I'm like, that means nothing. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's it's what happens, but
Being,
it's kind of funny. Cracks me up.
yeah, being courageous
But
in a
it's
different
part of the
culture.
fun. It's the fun of
Yeah,
travel. Exactly.
it
The
is.
fun of travel
It is.
is exactly that, is mixing all these different pieces and
Mhm.
having both the side of you that it expresses and then the part of you that actually, like you said, listens and like says, okay, wait,
Mhm.
what is the cultural norm here? And also give us it a
Yeah.
try. Because I
Yeah.
have seen plenty of people, like Americans, who are like arguing with the waitress or waiter about
Yes.
something. You're just sitting there going, they don't do it that way here. They're like, no, but that's Italian. And we're like, no, that's movie Italian.
No.
That is not the same thing. Like, and
Mhm.
even there's a cultural norm between the North and the South. So please stop. Just
Right.
stop. Just
All
stop.
the different
It's not
areas
going to
and
happen.
towns have their own. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, you can, anybody who's human, you would hope, anybody who's aware would know the body language is telling you enough.
Going
Okay.
slow is definitely one of those.
I think that would be a good place to start if you wanted to go there and then kind of expand on what going
Yeah.
slow means to you.
Going slow, definitely, that is even related to it so much, especially because, in my work with plants, the whole premise kind of when you start to communicate with the more than human world, especially with the plant world, you have to open yourself up to a whole series of different pieces of yourself. One of them is, of course, the whole idea that plants operate in a different timeline that we as humans do in a different pace, notwithstanding the fact that as soon as you're near a plant, the plant knows that you're there. The plant still has a different kind of interpretive field of the way that they understand the world around them. And so therefore, the conversation can be instantaneous. It's not to say that it can't be instantaneous. There are moments of that, but there is a lot that also is about almost a somatic response, feeling it in your body and understanding it at a different level. Because sure, I can interpret things with my kind of, human animal mind and feel like I get something. It's kind of like the same conversation we were talking about relating to Spanish. So, and Italian, right? People who listen to Spanish speakers who listen to Italian will say to you, I understand. And to a certain extent, they could get the gist of it. Like without any doubt, there are certain kinds of conversations, especially if they understand the setting, where they'll get the gist of what's happening. Because of course, the languages are similar enough for that. But if you really want to enter into a dialogue, then it requires me to stop, to step out of my Spanish mind and give myself the opportunity to enter in with an Italian landscape, just using an example. And that's very, very similar to when you start to work with plants. And so to a certain extent, you do have to stop yourself from saying, I am not going to kind of put words in there. I would say mouth, but they don't have mouths, so, but I'm not going to put words into the feelings and the sensations that I'm having yet, because the plant is pulling from my memories, from my understandings, from my body and my feelings and my sensations. And so if I give that a beat, if I give that a chance, and if I try to look at it outside of my human mind for a second, then I'm going to receive a lot more. I'm going to receive the whole dialogue, and I'm going to enter into a relationship very different than just getting the gist. So anybody can speak with a plant. I mean, it's an innate skill we all have. I mean, we evolved from a last common ancestor. So there's parts of us that are still very, very much connected. And so we have all the apparatus, let's just say, to be able to have deep conversations with plants. We smell and we can take in volatile organic compounds. We can see the way that the plant reacts and is experiencing things. We can touch and feel. And we also have the ability to experience their electromagnetic fields and all these other pieces that we've lost touch with, but the apparatus to do it is still there. And so it is in that slowing down that you kind of give your body permission to be the receiver. You allow your body to be kind of a little bit like a radio transmitter that starts to scan what it's receiving. And even though you can't necessarily pinpoint what frequency it is and understand exactly how that mechanism is arriving to you, you can still feel it and you can start to receive and hear, quote unquote, that communication. And so it really does open you to a whole series of different things. One, we get out of the conditioning of the way we interpret things. Oftentimes, our interpretation of people are based on whatever cultural or linguistical norms we've built, are rhetorical patterns that have certain meanings and all these different pieces. But when I'm talking and conversing with a plant, I have to step out of that. I have to let my whole body receive the answer. And I have to get inside of myself to kind of almost open my inner plantness, that part of me that is connected, that has presence, and then allow the meaning to come from there. And so it's a really beautiful way, a very safe, a very natural way for us to reconnect back to parts of ourselves that we've lost.
Anybody out there listening, my listeners may think, what does this mean? Like we can actually talk to plants. But if you had ever done in your lifetime, and I'm speaking from a US perspective growing up in the United States, if you had ever done a science fair project working with plants or observed somebody else's project where they showed how plants react to sunlight, too much, too little, react to water, too much, too little, types of water, you know that plants are one living and have a way of communicating. So you can't deny anything that was just mentioned about how plants are communicating and interacting
Right.
in our natural world. But to go beyond that and think that plants are going to be able to dialogue with us is something that we have to maybe take a leap of faith and lean into a little bit more. And so I'm sure there's so much more going on in my garden, which is nearby. So how are you thinking about going slow in your daily practice with plants? Are you somebody that practices maybe slowing your thinking and just observing? Do you spend like certain times of your day doing certain things? I'm just kind of fascinated to know more about what you do in your daily
Yeah.
practice.
So this is a really great question. So a lot of my work is around personal, like even before I started to actively teach and coach. A lot of it, as almost everybody does, right? You start with yourself. When I started working with plants, I
Hmm.
went into a deep period of observation of myself because when you look at the natural world works in cycles, all kinds of different cycles, right? You have, moon cycles, you have day and night cycles, you have seasonal cycles, you have, weather cycles, you have all these different patterns and cycles in the world. And yet we as human beings, because of the advent of artificial light and electricity and a whole series of go, go, go culture that we live in, we think we're supposed to be on all the time. And the truth of the matter
Hmm.
is our bodies, even if you take out the idea of like plant communication or thinking of plants, let's for a second even put to aside the idea of sentience or intelligence or consciousness, which of course I could go hours and hours on to try to express and explain and share from a scientific to a spiritual side. But let's just put that aside for a second. Let's just talk about like, okay, I am a being of nature, right? Because I come from the natural world, even though I don't believe it anymore and I've separated myself, but I'm an animal, right? I'm a mammal, which means I follow certain cycles. But yet my day-to-day life doesn't honor any of those cycles most of the time. I wake up with an alarm clock that tells me what time. I go into work when my boss tells me I'm supposed to be there. I, take my lunch when somebody else tells me it's my lunch hour. I mean, it really it's not conducive to the human being understanding themselves. So at one point in my life, many years ago, when I was living in Barcelona, I decided that since I had all the time in the world. I had come off tour with Cirque du Soleil. I was rebuilding my life. And I decided that I was just going to allow myself to see what my body's rhythm was. I had no clue what my body's rhythm was. I had been used to an alarm clock waking me up, and now I had no need for that to happen. So I started to just observe. I was like, I'm only going to sleep whenever I feel like I'm going to sleep, and I'm going to do things when I feel like I'm going to do things. And I'm going to trust because I know myself. I am an ambitious person. I am somebody that gets a lot done. I have a very quick mind. Like I know I'm going to get things done. So I'm going to just trust that it's all going to happen. I just don't have a clue how. And I started to see these
Mhm.
patterns develop in a regular basis. Like I would get up naturally, no matter what time I went to bed, I would still get up around 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe 9 was the max, never really later than that. Then I would get up and I would be really productive. I would, get my tea in the morning and like get my stuff ready and I would start to work and I would go through email and I would get like these strategic ideas and I would plan things and I would like do all the little tasky stuff that I had to do.
Mhm.
And then around like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it was Spain, so it was perfect for that. 2 or 3 in the afternoon was when I would get hungry. And so I would break for my lunch and I would have lunch. And after lunch, I was useless. Like I would take siesta, I would watch some Netflix. Like that was a time that I just hung out. Now, if I stayed at home, like I didn't go out with my friends or anything like that, I would probably be in that sort of in state, like where I was just like, reading, but casual reading, nothing major, or just watching TV or chatting with friends or stuff like that until the evening. And I would literally always do siesta. I still do siesta. I am a siesta person. Right before this call, I was on siesta. And then if I was awake around 9 p.m. to 10, I would find myself oftentimes naturally gravitating to the computer to start doing things, but that were creative. Like that's when I would create my programs. That is when I would do like art. That is when I would think of more, like I wasn't strategic. I couldn't get things done in that. If I had a to-do list, it was useless at that hour. But from around 9 to 10
Mhm.
p.m., about 10 till about 4 a.m., I am really creative. Like that's when I do art. That's when I create courses. That's when I think of programs. That's when I can answer creative questions. That is my time of creativity. And I started noticing this pattern in myself. And so since working with plants, that's expanded even further to think, okay, is that always like that? Or do I go through periods? For example, it's
Mhm.
summer now for me. So I am naturally more lethargic. It's hotter and it's not even the weather because here it's been cool. So, but it's a just natural pace. So I find that my window in the morning is shorter. My siesta in the
Mhm.
afternoon is larger and my evening, I tend to be more social. So my schedule already is built in this way where I don't really do client calls in the morning because that's the time when I strategize and I do promotional work and I think about my business. I'm more of a CEO during the morning. And then in the afternoon
Mhm.
is when I meet with clients. I do interviews. I do courses. I teach. I have my one-on-one coaching clients in the afternoon. So I've already built my schedule around this thinking and knowing that if I'm going to break it for whatever reason, it's only going to be for a limited period of time. I cannot do a recurring appointment in that way. So I already know how my body works. Like I don't really have anything before 3:30 to 4 o'clock because that's my siesta time before that.
Mhm.
So I kind of, 2 o'clock to about 3:30 is my siesta time. And that's when I really get like, I can barely even watch TV in that period. I'm like just lying there, staring out at the sun, going for a walk, doing those types of things. And so then I started to expand it out to, okay, wait a minute. If I look at myself across a month, if I look at myself across a year, like in the summer, in the winter, like I was saying, I am different. My cycles change. They're a little longer. The general rhythm is still always the same. And I test it every once in a while. Like, for example, when I did my coaching certification, I did it connected to a university in the United States. And I would get up at from 1 a.m. to 2:30 twice a week to do it. And I was
Yeah.
fine. And people were like, how do you do it? And I'm like, because this is when I'm creative and this is coaching, right? So it was like curiosity and questions and deep listening. And I was like all for it at that hour. It was perfect for me to do it like that because I know how my schedule
Mhm.
is. So it looks like slower because it is slower
Mhm.
in itself. But in the end, I get a lot more done because I'm not fighting my own body's tendency. I don't pick up my to-do list on a Saturday morning when I know I'm not going to get it done because my natural rhythm doesn't do that. That's my rest day. And not because I'm mentally holding myself back. If I feel inspired, I'll get up and I'll do it anyway. But it's not when I work best. And I don't like to do strategy sessions with people like my strategy. I can do my client strategy sessions because that's a different skill set and it requires a different thing. But like I don't do my marketing meetings or things like that in the afternoons very much because it's just not the time that it works for it. So I think once we start to get to know how our bodies work, we start to lean into those rhythms. We start to see what the natural cycles of what happens during summer, what happens during fall, what happens during the day, what happens in the moon cycles, not because I'm superstitious, but because
Mhm.
selenotropism, which is, attraction and connection to the moon, exists in the natural world. Tropism,
Mhm.
connection to sunlight exist. They are scientific principles, and therefore we adhere
Mhm.
to them just the same as a plant does, as a beaver does, as a bear does. Like we're all in that same rhythm, and we just have to find how it applies to our body.
Yeah. I think that's something that listeners can kind of hopefully take something away from because, we're all living in the same ecosystem. If you think about the world, there's definitely threads of similarities with different conversations I've had over the last couple of months about how one, as humans, we are pushing ourselves to the point of, in some cases, exhaustion because we are trying to go against our natural rhythm and what our natural environment is providing for us, and we're not taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Plus the advent of we don't realize how much certain things around us perpetuate that feeling even at a subliminal level. For example, I had a really wonderful conversation with an academic and professor who studies plants, agency of plants in art. So he works a lot in that realm. And we were having a conversation because one of his big topics is around still life, like what we consider to be the beautiful paintings of still life.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oftentimes, paintings and artwork relating to still life is artificial. We don't realize it because most of us don't know, but they are plants that do not bloom in the same season, and they're put in this beautiful
Mm.
bouquet together. And subliminally, what it reinforces is this sort of artificialness of you should always be in bloom. And this is one of the dangers right now that's happening with like AI plants.
Mm.
It's not the AI plants because, oh, they're not natural from a general perspective. It's the fact that they're unnatural in that they're always in bloom. And so it makes us feel at a subliminal level that I should always be in
Yeah.
bloom. And I can't always be in bloom. It does not show the
Right.
beauty of the rested state. It doesn't show the beauty of the bulb, the beauty of the soil that has none. If you go and you look at, I don't know, go to your favorite mall or your favorite like outdoor location as you're walking in, the landscaping almost always has flowers in it, no matter where you are or anything. It's not natural. It's raised in
Mm-mm.
these ways to promote that, which again, in a subliminal level, reinforces the idea of you should always be showy.
Mm.
You should always be in bloom. You should always be visible. You should always be showy. But that's not true. There are months of the year that our own cycles require us to be a little bit more, slow down, to be a little bit more introspective, to change the language that we're in. And what I find is that when I do that, when my clients do that, you start to connect better because all of a sudden the person's nervous system breathes and is like,
Mm.
thank you. Like, and you start to see the beauty in that rest. When I show a bulb and I show a tulip, right? And I look at both of them and I can see the beauty of that bulb and the beauty of that tulip. I can see the barren pot with nothing growing out and look at it and feel it as beautiful. Then all of a sudden I see my own non-output during moments of deep introspection or of
Mhm.
planning or of inventory of all these things. I start to see that as beautiful. So we kind of almost need to really embrace a slower pace. We need to see the beauty in that slower place and that beauty,
Mhm.
not just in ourselves, but we need to see it in others. I want to see somebody who tells me I went and I took a nap. Like, I think that that's beautiful. I think it's also beautiful when a company tells me we're doing inventory right now. We're not going to be releasing a new thing right now because we're taking a moment to understand our clients, to understand their needs, to make sure we're doing the right thing for our own people, or we're giving them time off so that they can rest and reset and renew and go through this. So once you start stepping into these cycles, you start to see the beauty in them, and then you appreciate them in others as well as yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I always value when companies say that we're taking time off, we're not responding to your emails in the next 2 weeks because we're all on holiday. And I think that's great.
Right.
Yeah, we need to, I would love to see more of that. I know that's more of kind of, it tends to be more of a European thing or maybe a regional thing in different parts of the world. But I mean, it is, I think it's to be human is to follow the cycles more instead of being a robot.
Yep. Yeah, there was a huge controversy. And it's interesting because I do think we do have to follow cultural norms. There was this huge controversy that happens. It's not really over. But in Italy, for example, the Tuscan region of Italy has a lot of Chinese immigrants, people who have moved and are now like second, third, fourth generation Italian, but they come from original Chinese backgrounds. And so therefore the Chinese have a different rhythm of their work. They tend to have work and home be very, very connected, but they also have a different holiday rhythm. And this is a really interesting one. So the Italians get all pissed off at them because they're open during periods that the Italians are closed. And they try to explain, they're like, we're not doing it. So they're like, oh my God, it's like forced labor. They're just pushing everybody to work all the time. And they're like, no, it's that Christmas doesn't exist for us. So for us, that's not a holiday. We'll take the Chinese New Year. And then when we take that off, you get pissed off because we're closed during Chinese New Year. You're like, you have to also let in the cultural norms, but that also have a rhythm because I have a podcast episode where I talk about this. I talk about using natural cycles and rhythms, but that includes also deep set cultural rhythms. Like it is an important thing, but for you to also honor whomever's culture it is. So if that's Kwanzaa, or if that's taking, a Chinese New Year off, or if that's taking Memorial Day, or, the 4th of July, or the 14th, like there's so many cultures that have deep, deep bedded dates. And so you have to kind of recognize both, that those are also they've become part of the cultural landscape, the land that we're on, and that has a rhythm also in that piece. And it's really interesting when you start to give yourself that practice of observing. It was a fascinating myself. So I'm of Cuban heritage. And so it was really interesting to see the places where my heritage intersects the Spanish. So when I was in Spain, living in Spain, how easily some things kind of just fell into being because we had very, very similar rhythms in the way that those were expressed. And how many, because I grew up mainly in the US, like how much of it was US based. And it was just really interesting to see, to feel that not so much intellectually or like when things were opened, but more of, what does my body want to do today? Like I still, after living out of the US now for so long, it's interesting to see which holidays my body still instinctively, without even thinking about it. Like I might even not remember mentally what date it is, but I realize, why do I not want to do anything today? And it's like, oh, because it's, whatever, the 4th of July. And it's like, we just don't do anything. Or, there's certain days where my body is still tuned to knowing that is considered a day off. As a matter of fact, here, for example, even though I've lived in Italy for 15 years, like Ferragosto, which is a big, big holiday, it's like the Labor Day equivalent here. Forget it, man. They have to pull me out because I forget like, man, exactly the 15th of August. And they're like, you have to, it's a day off. And I was like, no, it's not. It's like, yes, it is. Or there's like, there's also here, big Independence Days or whatever. I forget half of them. Like every once in a while, one of them has seeped into my system, but others just don't seep into my system. And it's not because I don't mentally know them. It's because they're not part of my body's landscape and my cultural kind of programming into it. And all of that is a form of slowing down. Like really feeling into that is a form of slowing down.
Yeah. And you think of it, depending, the more transient we get in the world, the more we move around, whether it's travel or where we choose to live, we're going to intersect with those different cultures. I mean, Middle Tennessee definitely has different cultures around days of the week. a lot of businesses aren't open on Monday. That blows my mind as somebody who's from the East Coast.
Right.
You're always open on Mondays, but not in parts of
Right.
Tennessee. It's just not that way. So yeah, it
No.
just depends. Like, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
wherever
we
we
have
go,
entire
we're going to.
towns. We also have entire towns that are not open. Like the town nearest me is like not open on Wednesdays. And I always forget. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go do this. And then I get into town. I'm like, it's a ghost town. Oh, it's Wednesday, isn't it?
Yeah,
Damn it.
yeah.
Can't get
I think
anything
I
done.
remember that in Italy too. Like there were certain market days in different towns, and if you didn't remember, you had to go find another market open in another
Yeah.
town.
Yeah. There's market
Yeah.
towns and then there's the markets and then there's the days when the actual town, like if there's small enough towns like where I am, there's towns just don't open. Like literally no shops are
Mhm.
open on Wednesday in that town. It doesn't matter what time of it. Like the bar or the cafe is open early in the morning and then after that nothing
Mhm.
is open. No restaurants, no banking, no nothing. Doesn't matter. It's not open.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's just the way it always
Yeah.
been.
But it's a good reminder that, there's lots of life out there in the world that are operating on different rhythms, different cycles. So it's okay to go slow to go fast and just go slow sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of those types of things are around getting comfortable and also making choices, right? I made a choice to live here. And so
Mhm.
therefore you have those experiences. I think that
Right.
this part that we need to reconquer or reconnect with is again, what is the cycle of my body and how does that work for me? So for example,
Mhm.
my day off, like I said, like day off, like literally in the sense of do not bother me at all is my Saturday
Mm.
mornings.
Mhm.
My Saturday mornings are my sacred space. If I am going to have something because I can't get out of it, it'll be like at around 11. But like my morning of my Saturday is my sacred. It's what my body feels most in this period of my life. But I have had other periods of my
Mhm.
life where it was maybe like even a Tuesday or, where as my body rotates through different parts of the cycle, it chooses different days. Certain days I go to bed much earlier and it's a natural thing. It's not a forced thing. I think the hardest part for most people is that even though I live in community, so let me just state this for everybody, like I live in community, it is not so easy because we have a community rhythm. I mean, I know certain people always say to me when I try to talk about these things, they're like, oh, but you don't understand, like such and such happens on this day, such and such. Trust me, I live in community. Like we have very set schedules across things. That being said, knowing my own schedule in my own body schedule, I can make better adaptations for when I can't, for when there's a conflict. So like the other day, I had a Saturday morning meeting at 9:30. Was not my ideal
Mhm.
time, but I was knowing that that was going to happen. I was able to, because I know myself, I can also be nice to myself when I'm a little bit more slower to get into the meeting or prepare myself in a different way because I know that this is a day that my body naturally reacts in this way. Or if I know that, for example, my mornings are more for strategy and logistical things and such, and I have, for example, one of my collaborators who's in the United States, we have to have our strategy meeting in the afternoon. So we work to do it in the time that is most convenient, both of us, and I have to prep
Mhm.
myself that day. And when I don't prep myself, it is very clear that I did not prep myself for the meeting.
Yes.
So
Right.
part of also this going slow is giving yourself permission and scheduling yourself the time necessary to adapt into those things that are not movable. I cannot appear at a
Mhm.
9:30 meeting in the morning on a Saturday pretending that it's 9:30 on a Thursday. Because even though it's still 9:30 in the morning, my body does not react the same way. And therefore, knowing that, I give myself permission. The people, my collaborators know me a little bit better and they understand these parts of myself, or I prep myself in a completely different way. And so I don't get mad at myself when my mind doesn't react the same way, or I don't try to just, fake it until I make it. It's a completely different thing. So sometimes going slow is not even the action of completely changing everything. It is the prep
Mhm.
or the awareness with which you enter into something
Mhm.
so that you can be much more productive because you're not fighting your own physical body. You're working with the way your mind and your body reacts. You're understanding what it is that your body needs And you are being gracious to yourself to say, rather than telling yourself, oh, there's something wrong with you, why aren't you just feeling awake? You're saying to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
no, I am not going to pump myself up with caffeine and try to do this. As a matter of fact, notwithstanding the fact that I'm more lethargic in the afternoon, I don't drink caffeine after, like, I only drink caffeine caffeine. I don't even drink coffee because I don't like coffee. But I mean, I only drink tea that has like caffeine instead of a tisane that in the morning. And it's because I found a way to work with that cycle of my afternoon. And again, I'm more inquisitive. I'm more chit chatty. I'm more like all these other things. So I plan those types of activities. And if I need to do something different, I prep myself for that. And I think that that's another aspect of going slow that we forget about.
Yeah. It's not being lazy, it's being self aware.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being and strategic because you
Mm-hmm.
realize your times of day that are better for you for different tasks, rest, whatever your activities are. So I think that's a really good message for listeners of this, go slow approach, that it's not being lazy. So I'm hoping that you don't feel guilty out there. And I think we all need to have some sort of siesta built into our day. Adapt the European
Yes. Siesta
lifestyle
is
as much as
wonderfully.
possible.
I love
We
siesta. Siesta and I get along so, so nice.
Oh,
So
yeah.
nice.
And I mean,
We're
it's not
good
a
friends.
coincidence that so many cultures have some type of break in the afternoon. It's just we get up so early and we go, go, go that it just makes sense to have a break at some
Right.
point.
Exactly.
Um,
Yep.
Now, I
Exactly.
don't
And
think
that's
I could
it.
be
It's
eating.
about awareness. So much of it is awareness
Yeah,
and grace.
right. Yes. Grace. Absolutely. Like I couldn't be eating at 9 o'clock at night, but I could totally have a snack. So it's giving yourself
Oh,
grace.
yeah. I have no problem with that. I have no problem. As a matter of fact, I have a friend of mine right now that because he lives in Damanhur, the community that I live in, but he has family issues going on right now, so he's had to spend most of the time in Milan. And so when he can
Mm,
come, he has to come. He doesn't arrive here until around 11:30 at night. And so,
mm,
a group of us get together at our favorite kind of hole in the wall pub that we love so much. And that's when
mm,
we eat dinner. So we all have to like that day. He usually tells us about that morning. He's like, okay, I think I'm going to be able to come in tonight. And we're all like, okay. So then we prep. And it's so funny
yeah.
because there's a few of us that are like, literally, like we have to prep for it because we have just different kinds of cycles. And it's just really funny because it's like we get there and then we have dinner at 11:30 at night type of thing.
Yeah. But now
But
you've
it's
gotten
fine
used
if
to
you
it. It's
prep
part of
for
your
it.
rhythm. Yeah.
It is. It's part, well, like we said, we don't really go out that night earlier and we might take a nap before we do
Mhm.
other things. But it's
Yeah.
important for us because, he's got this situation. It's our opportunity to support him and to
Yeah.
see him and such like that. And so it's a beautiful thing. But it's really funny to just
I
see how
love that.
you can adapt when you know your body and you understand the things that come easy and the ones that you instead have to plan for. Then it
Mhm.
becomes so much easier to adapt to the midnight meeting that you have to have for whatever reason that might happen, or changing your time zone for a second or anything like that. Makes it a lot
Mm.
easier when you know yourself in that way.
Well, it was great chatting with you. I'm taking away adapting is a good thing and going slow. If you can figure out a way to fit it into your life, I think it would be a good way to go.
Absolutely. And I think we all can fit it in if we just give ourselves, if we believe in it, if we believe that it's something that is necessary, I think, and it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, I spent at least 6 months to a year observing myself, just observance, just to give myself that
Mm-hmm.
permission. And I mean, and I had that, I created a life for that. And little by little, you go making those changes. So the other part of going slow is that none of this has to change overnight. Like you can take the time
Right.
that you need in order to do it. It is about making those tiny little changes that give you the opportunity to move in the direction that you really want to move in.
Yeah. And make it work for you. That's the whole point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for your time. I thank you. I thank you for being here.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's listening.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Go Slow to Go Fast. And as we wrap up today's takeaways, let this episode be an invitation, not to do more, but to notice more. Notice the rhythm of your breath. Notice when your body asks for a rest. Notice what happens when you give yourself permission to pause without the guilt. Whether it's embracing a midday reset, stepping outside to reconnect with nature, or simply honoring the season you're in. Slowing down isn't a luxury, it's a life skill. It's how we build lives, families, and work that can actually sustain us. And if this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs permission to slow their pace and trust their timing. And until next time, remember, the light in me honors the light in you. And as you head into the rest of your week, let your light shine through. Go slow to go fast, and thanks for listening.